Any good stories from the road?
Pipe up.
I wish we'd gotten to see a little bit more out of our punter.
I'm starting to puke.
It makes my stomach hurt.
I thought he was going to die.
I'm starting to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
He's on the probiotics.
Is Georgia playing the 1985 Bears this weekend or what?
A lot of Todd talk.
Rat poison proof.
They're mongoose.
We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that. The hunting that we do will be done from us going the other direction.
All right, y'all. We are live from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I'm Wes Blankenship. This is Jake Rowe. Jake, Peach Bowl's finally here, man. And I don't know how you feel about this game. I've been checking on the Vegas trends on the way in here, and they've been pretty interesting.
It's weird, man. Obviously the line's moved a lot. I think it's down from a consensus standpoint to like 5 points, which is pretty crazy. Still, most of the public money on Georgia, but then most of the money line cash, a lot of it is on Ohio State. And keep in mind that's plus 180. That means you bet 100 to win 180. So one way or the other, it really looks like Vegas has kind of gotten it balanced out for themselves. I don't know what that means. This doesn't have any impact on the game. It just means that there are some people that do a really good job and hit more often than not. And sometimes more often than not is, 5.3 times out of 10 for those guys. They've got their own opinions about it. And still think this is a good matchup for Georgia. It's not the best matchup for Georgia. That's kind of the way we've looked at it all along is if Michigan's a tough team for Ohio State, Georgia's going to be a tough team for Ohio State. But at the same time, Ohio State is there's a dangerous football team, a wounded animal. And I don't think, I'm not going to stop any Georgia fans from feeling this way. But I don't think Georgia fans should be super, super overconfident that you're just going to blow this football team out. I think Georgia fans should be confident to win, but a blowout, pump the brakes and kind of have some expectations that you're going to see Georgia play a team that's going to, swing punches, swing and land some punches.
We've seen Georgia against teams that they overmatch and overpower. We've seen them in some games this season struggle a little bit out of the gate. I think about Georgia Tech, where they started a little bit slow, but when they're actually better than that team, they can put them away because of the depth and because of the size they have. I think there's a similar situation brewing between Michigan and TCU out in Phoenix. Do you see, I know there's talent across the board, but I'm really bullish on the depth that Georgia has, Jake.
I am too. I think that is a big, big factor in this game. And why, I think if Ohio State was as deep as Georgia, Ohio State would be as talented as Georgia. We can get into all the intangibles like physicality and things of that nature. I thought Todd Monken had some pretty genuine sounding comments about that where he just really brushed it off as, listen, Georgia's going to try to be more physical than everybody else, but just because the other team isn't as physical as Georgia or maybe hasn't shown it a time or two out doesn't mean they're not a physical football team. And I do think Ohio State's a physical football team. I watched that Notre Dame game to start the season, and Ohio State's physical. Now, is Ohio State as deep? Is it as physical as Georgia? We'll find that out. It may be as physical on this day. We'll know here at about 8:15 or 8:20 when this thing finally kicks off, right? But I still think Ohio State is a good football team, and I picked Georgia to win. But get ready. It's about to be a battle.
Production note, I'm going to zoom out and just show y'all what the stadium looks like, and I'm going to clean our lens right now because it needs it. This is the live production expertise that you can expect from DawgsHQ. But how sweet is this roof? That's what it looks like in case you've never been in here. Pretty cool vantage point as I hold our camera. We are a startup after all, so we're making the most out of what we have, but I think it's working pretty well.
I think the folks that love the Georgia show love the raw thing that is the Georgia show.
This is the Georgia show. This is what you get.
This is what you get.
It's what you don't pay for. This is a free show that you're allowed to just
Another thing is,
to.
listen, we're not a television station. I don't know if you know, if you're not a television station, if you're not ESPN, this is hard. Wes has put together something very difficult here to be able to do this thing live.
It's not that
and
bad.
I tell you what, man, we're excited to be here with you, and we're going to find a way to do it any chance we can get for the folks like Uncle Glenn Hartley and Andy Stowe and all the loyals.
Matthew C. always in here too.
Yeah, Matthew C. baby. What's Lucy Bowers?
There's Palmer. Palmer's going to join us in a few.
He's in the bullpen.
That's right. He's not mic'd up.
Yeah.
So all he can do is flick us off. That's the only way he can communicate. But he's not going to do that because his mom's watching. He just did it off screen, off camera. We're just doing this for as long as we possibly can before someone tells us to leave. Jake, the physicality is the buzzword, I think, that separates these two teams. And Ohio State's talked about how much they've focused on it this week. I'm starting to really wonder how much you can actually cram for that, if that makes sense.
I agree with that. That's a tough thing to do. I mean, maybe, you hear Kirby talk about it, set your jaw. Maybe that's what they're trying to do, prepare mentally for it. The Georgia's a big-time test in that regard. Still think the Dogs have to bring their A game to do that. That's something that the physicality wasn't there in the second half against LSU. And on one hand, I think you've got Ohio State maybe licking its chops, thinking it can kind of do the same thing to Georgia that LSU did. And I think on the other hand, Georgia coaches, Georgia players are thinking that was kind of embarrassing. It's a really interesting dynamic that I think is going to take some time to kind of unfold in this game. It wouldn't surprise me if this was, a couple of, I wouldn't say 3 and outs, but you're looking at the first 3 drives of the game for each team, and somewhere between 50 and 60 yards, a few first downs, no points, maybe 3-0 before these teams really start to feel each other out. Because when there's a long layoff like this, you need something kind of like Michigan has already gotten against TCU, ripping off a big 50-yard gain or whatever there on the first play of the. Oh, did they? Yeah.
Pick 6.
Didn't score on that 4th and goal. Pick 6.
Wow. Michigan's in trouble. Never mind. You don't need to do that. Listen, you give Georgia a 50-yard run on their first play of the game, they're going to take it. And something like that, I think, would help. I don't think unless you see something like that that either team's going to really get out to a fast start. It's why I kind of have what I feel like is a relatively low-scoring game at 34-27, because I just think that these teams are going to take some time to feel each other out before the points start flying up, and that's usually a product of time off, preparation, and some teams that have gotten their focus honed in at this point in the year.
Is there something to the 30-something point benchmark in the postseason for Todd Monken's offense? Last season, Georgia put up 34. They put up 33, obviously, on a pick 6 from Keely Ringo to get to that point. But there seems to be somewhat of a trend there where in college football, when you see a dominant matchup, a lot of times a team will put up 40-something and hold the other team to, in the teens or 20s or lower, fewer. But Georgia's offense, I don't want to say they shrink, but I'm not going to be surprised if Ohio State's defense holds the Dogs below what you're used to seeing this explosive offense put up.
Yeah, I can see that, but I've also been very, I would say skeptical, not critical of Ohio State's defense, because I keep going back to it. If you watch this show regularly, you've seen me cite this many times. Ohio State, if you look at yards per pass attempt, if you look at rushing yards per attempt, and if you look at it's uncanny. Right around 80 is the average team that they face nationally, their offenses. So Ohio State's defense has faced really bad offenses this year. Now, does that mean it doesn't mean that they're not going to come out and get a crazy pass rush against Georgia and have Stetson Bennett running for his life? Missouri did that. That was in a road environment and in kind of a weird game. So maybe that's not something that, is going to, come across. It was a long time ago as well. But I'm skeptical of Ohio State's defense. The horses are there, the talent is there, but another thing I keep going back to as well is I think Jim Knowles felt like he had to crowd the line of scrimmage to stop Michigan's rushing attack, and if he feels like he has to do that, maybe that tells us more about Ohio State's defense than our eyes ever could.
UGA boy, taking us to a perfect segue here that I was about to ask you about. Ladd McConkey and the health of A.D. Mitchell. We got to hear from both of those guys at Georgia's Media Day opportunity. But what's the latest on Ladd McConkey for some fans out there that haven't been keeping as close track on it as you have? What do you expect from Ladd McConkey's effort today against Ohio State?
Well, unless something happens during pregame, he's going to play. And I think he's going to play as long as he can possibly play. It's a pain tolerance issue. He got some stuff going on with that knee. I don't think it's something that's going to get any worse, and I think he's probably going to get after it. It might be a situation where they don't have him for a series or two. They've got to kind of let him get his feet back under him. It may be a situation, and I've seen this happen before, where you get him started and you don't want to stop him because then it stiffens up and he starts to have some trouble with it. So, I'm really interested to see. And somebody told me earlier this week, I said, is he going to be limited or not? And they said, I think he's probably going to go until he can't go anymore. And that might be today. That might be down the road. If Georgia's able to win this game, I don't know. But I expect Ladd McConkey to play. Warren McClendon, I'm a little iffy about. A.D. Mitchell's good to go, y'all. A.D. Mitchell We watched him go through ring drills on Saturday. On Saturday. Today's Saturday. On
Thursday.
Wednesday. We watched him go through the ring drills on Wednesday.
They did yoga on Thursday.
Yeah, yoga. AD was moving really, really well. And one of the things that I've really noticed from, seeing AD up close last year, seeing AD up close this year, is he has really kind of added some mass. He's a bigger kid, especially in the lower half. I think he's the kind of guy that I think he's waiting on this moment. There was a quiet confidence about him when we spoke to him on Wednesday, and like Palmer brought up, like bread and butter is what he said about his and Stetson's connections.
He had a really good game against Oregon the last time he really got to play a full game.
It's the only stadium he knows how to play in this year.
Yeah, I mean he's like a hibernated dog. And
yeah.
He just kind of slept all season, rehab, and now he's back and ready to play. Other than AD, other than the receivers, let's talk about the defense. I'm really fascinated, as always, with this battle on the line of scrimmage. And I know that Jalen Carter has a lot to prove today against a really good offensive front from Ohio State. But when you see what he was able to do, the havoc he's been able to wreak when he's healthy this season, what kind of a chance do you give Ohio State's offensive line? Again, you bring up the fact that they haven't played anyone that's very good defensively other than Michigan, I would say. What are you expecting to see in that matchup specifically?
I think they're going to have to pay a lot of attention to him to keep him in check. When you look at that offensive line, there's some buzz starting to creep around amongst the people I talk to that Georgia's really confident in things up front. That Georgia thinks that it can kind of get after Ohio State up front. We'll see if that's the case. But when you talk to people about Ohio State's offensive line, they talk kind of a lot more glowingly about the tackles than they do those middle three dudes. And, that's where Jalen Carter's going to be. That's where Jalen Carter's going to make his hay. And, not just him, but Nazir Stackhouse, Warren Brinson, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins and Michael Williams can slide inside on later downs. And then Bear Alexander in a pass rush situation. I think Georgia, that is a key for Georgia in this game. And if it can decisively win that matchup, win those individual boxes right there on the interior three, I think Ohio State's in for a long day.
One more thing on the defense before we highlight some extracurriculars going on.
Yeah, they're
over here.
Unrolling stuff over here. You don't know when I'm going to lose my focus.
I know Jake is really getting antsy right now.
Yeah.
They're unfurling this tunnel here.
Yeah.
By the way, I've covered a lot of games. This is my first Peach Bowl. I'm pretty excited.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I didn't go to the one in 2020. When they did that, did they do that on New Year's Eve?
They
played Cincinnati.
No, they played New Year's Day.
They played New Year's Day, so that was in 2021
at noon, I believe.
Yeah.
And it was way more rainy actually than it is today. This is the first time I've ever gotten into the stadium this time of year for any type of game dry, because the national championship game wet.
Right.
2020 Peach Bowl, had to roll my pants up in the press box. I got so wet.
You had duck boots on.
Yeah.
Like you
I didn't.
Should have worn them.
I should have worn them. I wish I did. I wish I'd have worn waders that day. And then today, actually, it was raining, but we got in here dry. Thank goodness. PT over here dropped me off at the gate. So,
good job, PT.
My chauffeur.
Palmer Dog. We're going to get him on in a minute to talk about Malachi Starks. I want to ask Jake about Keely Ringo. You've been defending this guy from the masses, from the knee-jerk overreactors in the Georgia fan base. And I think some people that are watching Georgia and thinking that he's the weak link today against Ohio State's wide receivers. Look, Ohio State's wide receivers are going to get theirs. It's not just going to be Keely Ringo's fault. What are you expecting from number 5? I personally think he's going to have a bounce-back game that shows people that he's not the dog, the bad connotation of dog that you think he is.
Big game Keely, right? Alabama played really well in that game. Played well in the Orange Bowl last year. Played better than Derrick Kendrick in that game. Played really well against Tennessee earlier this year. You're right, Wes. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka, they're going to get theirs. They're going to hit some plays. They're the kind of receivers that can catch balls against Keely Ringo. Those underneath things. They're Cedric Tillman types in a lot of ways. I expect from Keely Ringo to tackle well. I expect him to also keep things in front and limit the explosives. He's got to play better. And listen, it's not just for me. It's not the coverage as much as it is the dadburn tackling. I mean, come on, man. That is the thing that, like, you're a 6'2", 210-pound corner. You need to be knocking guys off their feet. And, I don't know if he's maybe protected himself a little bit. I don't know. He's had shoulder injuries he's dealt with in the past. There's a lot going on there. But I think you're right. I think he does need a bounce back game. And I think if he does and plays extremely well in this game, I think Georgia's got a really good shot. There are so many different pressure points, Wes. When you say if Georgia can do this or if Georgia can do that, it really stacks the deck against Ohio State.
You've got plenty of preview material over at DawgsHQ.com that people can read and really get into the mind of Jake Rowe, which at times is a very distracted place when you have, tunnels being inflated over your shoulder. You don't really know what's going on there. But if
I'm about to be done for 30 minutes.
If you really want to know what's going on between the ears when it comes to this ball game, you can head over to DawgsHQ.com. Let me get one final thought from you, Jake. If there's one guy today that if he plays well, I know this is a team sport, but if there's one guy today that if he dominates his matchup, Georgia will win, who is it?
Well, I can't say Stetson because that's the obvious, right? Oh man, that's a good one.
I put you on the spot.
If you don't say Stetson, it's hard because I think Georgia's got a lot of. I think if it's not Stetson, it's Brock Bowers, because I think there's just so many different areas where you can say that. But I think Brock Bowers is the one that if he goes off, big things are happening for the Georgia offense.
All right, good stuff, Jay. Go get yourself a Chick-fil-A sandwich. Palmer Thomas is going to join me here. They're going to do a little mic switcheroo. In the meantime, I want to encourage y'all to check out Breaking Tea. There's a link to Breaking Tea in this episode description, whether you're watching it live or on a replay. We give them a shout out every time we do one of these episodes of the Georgia Show because they have great work featuring artwork from a talented team with some cool references, some cool memorabilia, some cool swag, shirts, coffee mugs, all that, dating back to the national championship and even with some references this season to Georgia's story. And they do a really good job of capturing the Dogs story on T-shirt form and on coffee mug form. It's a medium too, and they do a great job of it. While Palmer gets his mic set up and makes his way over here and we try not to get eaten by this cow, I think that's what it is. I just know it's just a football helmet. What is this, a football helmet? Yeah. It's a football helmet. We've just confirmed. Palmer, are you okay?
I don't know, man. I might get eaten up, like you said.
This is like Ghostbusters.
And I was thinking for a second. I was like, yeah, kind of looks like a cow.
I thought it was the cow.
Yeah, Chick-fil-A. There's probably going to be the cows dropping from the ceiling.
The cows are going to be parachuting in from the
with Chick-fil-A,
UFO ceiling up there.
With Chick-fil-A gift cards, right?
I've never been. I don't know. I think that's what they do.
I think that's what comes down with the cows. I mean, how if you're lucky enough to come up with one of those and you follow this show, please let us know.
Yeah, let us know. Send us a photo.
Answers.
Send us a photo proof that you got one of the Chick-fil-A cow droppings. I don't know what else to call it.
If you tweet me at Palmer Toms with you and a picture of you and your cow dropping.
Cow droppings.
Cow shoot.
Hashtag cow droppings.
Hashtag cow droppings. I will personally retweet you.
Oh, there you go.
I don't have that huge of a following.
What other way would you want to ring in the new year than a retweet from Palmer Dog? Palmer, I just teased that I was going to ask you about Malachi Starks. You did a story about number 24 when we had availability at Georgia's Media Day, and we don't get to hear from the freshman at all during the season. He's a guy that's had a lot of highs this season, some lows that you saw in the SEC championship game, but overall, what were your takeaways from talking to Starks?
Yeah, Malachi is a kid that I've really enjoyed covering. Dabbled with recruiting a little bit during his senior year, and talked to him through that process at Jefferson. Watched the game between him and Gunnar Stockton, and to follow him through the end of his high school career and the start of his collegiate career has been really fun. Incredible kid, really incredible football player too. We're talking about a guy that there just aren't many players that are capable of making that jump and being this effective. I mean, like you said, there's been some highs. Maybe the highest of highs happened just down there with that first quarter, second drive interception of Bo Nix in the opener. And there's been some lows, which also may have happened in this building. not his best game against LSU. But overall, I mean, for a freshman, somebody that's that athletic, you've got to give him a chance, and he's made the most of it. Been really impressed with what Malachi has done, and I know you asked Jake that question about, hey, if this person dominates the game.
Yeah, go ahead and get to it.
It's not Malachi for me. Malachi's not my answer, but he's somebody that I did think about. I put out Palmer's players to watch today, and Malachi was one that I thought about. But if you've read the article, you know what I think about this question, and I'm going with one of the guys that was my players to watch. That would be Jalen Carter. I mean, think back to that Tennessee game, the impact that he had on that game, the disruptive force that he was on that defensive line. I think it was 3 tackles for loss, something like that. He had 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, was a Bednarik Award National Player of the Week. If Jalen Carter can do that and can push people off the line of scrimmage, I think he's going to be a huge player. A huge player and can really disrupt the game. And it's a huge help for the secondary too. I mean, if you're able to get CJ Stroud off his game like that, it's a huge help going up against a talented receiver group.
So we've just been told that the helmet is about to come down, and it actually has to go right where we're sitting. So I don't want to lose our credentials for this game or for Georgia's next game, should they make it to it. Palmer, my last question for you. When you look at the other side of the ball, Ohio State's defensive front against Georgia's offensive line, you've spoken to them a lot, and them being Georgia's O-line. And
there's a lot of them.
And they feel like they were disrespected a little bit. They wouldn't give you a ton about not winning the O-line award, the Moore Award that Michigan won again, all right? The games where I've seen Georgia struggle, they've let D-lines dominate them out of the gate. Do you feel like, from what you've heard, Georgia is going to bring a chip into this game, or could you see maybe Georgia starting a little bit slow? Because I'll tell you, that's the matchup for me. If Georgia starts slow with their O-line against Ohio State's angry front seven, that's a matchup where I do feel like Ohio State could get an early edge in this thing.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, games where Georgia has struggled, the defensive line has given them trouble. Doesn't quite rhyme, but it kind of feels like it does.
It works.
We'll say it rhymes. That Missouri game is the one that comes to mind the most. And I think Ohio State, way more talent on their defensive line than Missouri had. 2 former 5-stars in JT Tuimoloa.
That sounds
totally messed up his name there. And much easier name to say, Jack Sawyer. Those 2 guys, incredible players up front for them. That is the strength of their defense, just like it is the strength of Georgia's defense. If they're able to disrupt this game, that's going to be – we saw what it did against Missouri. I mean, Georgia, if Stetson Bennett is having trouble staying on his feet, if they can't run the ball, there's not a ton you can do offensively if your offensive line is getting pushed around. I don't think that's going to be the case, though. I do think this Georgia offensive line is playing with a chip on their shoulder. We saw how they came out and played in that Orange Bowl last year against Michigan. They felt slighted then that they didn't win the Joe Moore Award. They feel slighted again. They wouldn't say it, but you could sense it.
Yeah.
I do think they're going to come out and play with a chip on their shoulder tonight.
All right. Well, that's what we got for now. Head on over to DawgsHQ.com for the rest of our thoughts, our staff predictions that went up yesterday. What was your score prediction for this one?
I was 34-28.
All right, I was 34-30. We're all in the same network.
We were all 34 or 35 points for Georgia, and all having Georgia win. We were all pretty close.
Yeah.
I think anywhere from 24 for Ohio State to 28 for Ohio State. So.
Yep, it's in that ballpark. We'll see if we're right. We all had Georgia winning for what it's worth, but y'all go check out all of the intel that Palmer and Jake Rowe and myself have shared over at DawgsHQ.com. Hit subscribe on our YouTube channel if you don't already. We'll be back with more at DawgsHQ.com, a live feed of our reactions, our takes to what's going on the field, and on our YouTube channel as well with all the post-game reaction. For from when Georgia wraps this thing up and punches its ticket to the national championship game. Appreciate it, Palmer. Appreciate y'all and everybody that's tuned in this year. Hope y'all have a safe New Year's Eve and a great start to 2023. We'll catch y'all next time. Peace.